Hare Krishna, so welcome everyone to our Srimad Bhagavatam review class. We'll begin with our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and last time we discussed the fifth chapter. So in the fifth chapter, Vidurji, he asks Maitreya. So after traveling through all the holy places, ultimately Vidura reached Yamuna. There he met with Uddhava, and he asked about Krishna and all the descendants of Yadu dynasty and Kuru dynasty. Already he knew that Krishna has departed, but still his heart was not convinced about it. So he asked Uddhava again, and Uddhava, he explained in great detail about the various pastimes of Krishna, starting from birth, the pastimes of Braja, then pastimes of Mathura, Dwarka, and then he described the disappearance of Krishna also and Yadu dynasty also. And then Uddhav, he said, now I'm going to Badrika Ashram. And he said, Krishna described me his Paramam Sthiti, the supreme transcendental position. So Viduraji, he asked, can you please tell me about that also? So Uddhava, he considering the Maryada, because Vidura was like his father. So he said, please go to Maitreya and ask from him. So Vidurji, he reached Haridwar. There Maitreya was there, and he asked so many questions to Maitreya Muni, starting from why people are suffering in this world. And then he asked so many other things, and he asked about the Purushavatar Katha also. So in response to that, Maitreya Muni, he described how the creation happens. And in the last class, we discussed the Srishti, the Karana Srishti, how Mahavishnu, he glances on the Mahatattva, on the Pradhan, and then it gets transformed into Mahatattva, and then under the influence of the time and modes of nature, it manifests all the 23 elements of creation. So that's what we discussed in 5th chapter. So in the 6th chapter today, which is entitled The Creation of the Universal Form. So this is a pic from the Subodhani itself. So after the creation of 23 elements, the Mahatattva, Ahankar, 5 Tanmatras, 5 elements, and 10 senses, and the mind, they are the 23 elements of creation. So they were created, but their activities were suspended. Nothing was happening there. So all the controlling deities of the elements, they prayed to the Supreme Lord in the last chapter. We heard that also. And In this chapter now, Maitreya, he describes how Karanodaksha Vishnu, he responded to the prayers of these presiding deities. So these devatas, they were eager to serve Krishna, and they were ready to cooperate. So eagerness to serve Krishna and willingness to cooperate with Krishna, it attracts Krishna's mercy. So that's what happened. So when Karanodaksha Vishnu, he heard the prayers of devatas, he appeared as Garbho Daksha. So before that, he sent his Bibhrat Shakti. So that is what will be described in this chapter. So Maitreya Rishi continues that Lord, after he heard all these prayers of the devatas, he started thinking, oh, this creation is not proceeding, so I have to do something. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, actually in this world, nothing can move without the will of the Lord. So although everything was created, but still, because the Lord didn't interfere, so creation was not proceeding. Prabhupada gives an example that this entire world, there is nothing lacking in this creation. All the potencies are there in the dormant state, but because unless they are combined by the will of the Lord, they cannot progress. So this entire material universe, this entire creation is manifested so that people who cannot think about Krishna, they can actually understand something about the Supreme Lord. For example, when somebody sees the president traveling in limousine, so he can't see the president, but he has some conception of the president. Oh, this is limousine, no. So people call, oh, president is going. They are not seeing the president. They are just seeing the car. But what are they saying? President is going, So similarly, this universal form gives some conception about the Supreme Lord. So that is how this creation is made, so that we can understand something. And those people who are having no material, no spiritual conception of the Lord, they can know something about the Supreme Lord. So that's why it is described like this. So in this chapter, the 5th time the creation is described, the Virata Rupa is described. So in Bhagavatam, total 5 times this Virata Rupa is described. So first time it comes in the 1st chapter of the 2nd canto. So the purpose of description of Virata Rupa is different every time. So in the 1st chapter of the 2nd canto, the Virata Rupa is described to tell that attached yogi, he has his object of meditation as Virata Rupa. And by that meditation, he gets purified. Then in the 6th chapter of the 2nd canto, again the creation comes. So the purpose of that description was, whatever we see in this world, the Lord is the cause of everything. Lord Vasudeva is the cause of everything. Dravya, Kalacha, Karmascha, Subhavo, Jivo, Evacha. Whatever is creating this, whatever is used to create this material universe, it is coming from the Supreme Lord. Then the 10th chapter again in the 2nd canto describes Virata Rupa. What is the purpose of that? The purpose was the desire of the living entity shape our gross and subtle body. Because of the desires, the living entity gets a gross body and the subtle body. As Bhagavad Gita also describes, Antakale yam yam vapi smarana bhavam tejyatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavita. So whatever a person thinks at the time of death, he attains that form. And what the person will think at the time of death? Whatever desires he has cultivated throughout the life. So our desires, they shape our gross body and our subtle body. That is described in the 10th chapter of the 2nd canto. Then in the 6th chapter, in this chapter again, the 4th time the creation is coming. So the purpose of this description is that this universal form is created by Lord's Shakti. Otherwise, all the elements were created, but nothing was happening. So only when Lord intervenes in any of the activity, then the function goes on. So therefore, this chapter begins, the first verse. Maitreya Muni says that Lord, he created this universe by his own Shakti. What is that Shakti? That is Maya Shakti, not Yog Maya. That is Mahamaya. So by the power of Mahamaya Shakti, this entire universe is created. And then after Lord creates all these material elements, then he sends his cohesive energy, Bibhrat Shakti. Kala Sangyam Tada Devi Bibhrat Shakti Urukramaham. Bibhrat Shakti means cohesive energy. What is that cohesive energy? This cohesive energy is goddess Kali. That goddess Kali enters all these elements and combines them together. So that is how the process continues. Prabhupada writes that this goddess Kali is actually another form of Lord's energy. Time factor, Prabhupada writes, the time is energy of the Lord, and this energy is also called as Kali. So that's what Prabhupada writes. So then Supreme Lord, he entered these elements and enlivened all these elements. Just like a person who wakes up from sleep and starts engaging in all the activities. So all these elements, when Lord entered into them through his Vibhrat Shakti, the elements started functioning. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that these living entities, they are conditioned souls. And in each creation, each time Lord creates this material universe, Lord gives all these conditioned souls a chance to get liberated. Millions of lifetimes he has given us the chance to get liberated. But still we have not taken that advantage. Again, this lifetime, this chance is there to get liberated. So by studying the Vedas, by associating with devotees, by chanting the holy names of the Lord, by practicing devotional service, we have the chance to go back to the spiritual world again. So therefore, Prabhupada writes that individual souls, all the living entities, all the conditioned souls, they are struggling in this material world since millions of lifetimes. And in every life, we cultivate some desires. And based on those desires, we take a next body. But at the time of dissolution, what happens when Brahmaji dies or Brahmaji sleeps? All the living entities, they enter the body of Mahavishnu. And at the time of next creation, all the living entities are again put into their bodies. Gross body is given to them. At that time, the living entity doesn't remember his past desires. Who reminds them? That is the Lord who reminds us. That is how Lord helps us in fulfilling our own desires. So why Lord is giving us the facility to fulfill our desires? Because he wants that we surrender to him voluntarily. He could have done it forcefully, but love is not forced. You cannot put gun on anyone's head and say you love me. It should be voluntary. So therefore, although Lord is all powerful, he can transform our desires, but he doesn't do that. He gives every living entity a chance to transform his own desires using his own willpower, his own independence. Everybody has a little independence given. Swatantrata Ratna. And Lord wants that we use that Swatantrata Ratna and get transformed, start loving Krishna. So then after this Vibhrat Shakti, after this cohesive energy entered all these material elements, then the activity started. And all these 23 elements, they combined together to form a gigantic universal shell. So this Brahmand, it was formed. But the problem is, although the Brahmand was formed, but still the activity was not happening. So it laid there for 1,000 years like that without any activity. Then Lord expanded as Garbho Dakshai Vishnu. So from Mahavishnu or Karano Dakshai Vishnu, Lord came expanded as Garbho Dakshai Vishnu and entered into each and every universe. And then when Lord entered as Garbho Dakshai Vishnu in each and every universe, then the activity started. Then this entire entire universe started differentiating into 14 planetary systems. So that's how this creation happens. So Prabhupada writes that the elements of the cosmic creation, they are all matter. They have no energy, no potency to combine together. Somebody has to do it, right? If there are some ingredients lying in the kitchen, they won't combine together automatically on their own. A person has to enter the kitchen and start cooking. Similarly, when Lord Garbho Dakshai Vishnu enters this universe, then the universe starts functioning properly. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, matter is a product of spirit and increases only by the touch of spirit. Only when the Lord enters this universe, then this universe starts functioning. A similar example, common understanding, till the time the soul is there in the body grows. So till the time the soul is there in this universe, who is the super soul of this universe? That is Garbho Dakshai Vishnu. So when the super soul enters this universe, then the universe starts functioning. People who are nature lovers, they think nature is God. They keep talking about the miracles of the nature, but they don't understand who is the person behind these miracles. But a devotee, he understands that how this wonderful creation is working. And therefore he appreciates the Supreme Lord. So then this Garbho Dakshai Vishnu entered this universal shell and started all these activities. And this Virat Purusha, this universal form, it differentiated into, as you can see in the slide, 1, 10, and 3. So what is this 1, 10, and 3? So Garbho Dakshai Vishnu, manifests this universe by putting this Jiva Shakti, all the living entities, and then along with the living entities, the 10 life heirs. Every one of us, we have so many movements, all the movements which are happening in our body. Why? How? Because there is an air which is moving. Many times we get some spasm, muscle spasm. So what they say in Ayurveda, Vat badh gaya, So the air, all the movements happening in the body is because of some air. So therefore, these 10 life airs are impregnated, subdivided. So universal form divides into Chitta, that is consciousness, then the 10 life airs, and then the 3 modes of self-identification. Prabhupada writes a very nice purport here. He says that the individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness. Simple understanding. All of us, we are supposed to serve Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And that is the only way to purify our consciousness. Pravishta karna randrena swanam bhava saroruham dhunoti shamalam Krishna salilasya sharat. So when the sound vibration enters the ears, when we connect to the Supreme Lord through sound vibration, then the consciousness is purified. Yasya khilami vahabi sumangalai vacho vimishra gunakarma janmabhi prananti shumbhanti punanti vai jagatyastad virakta shavashobha namati. all the sins, akhil amiv, ami means sins, all the sins, they get purified when we hear the guna, karma, and the name of the Supreme Lord. That animates this world, purifies this world. Otherwise, all the other things, whatever related to this world, if we glorify them, it is like decoration of a dead body. So therefore, the individual consciousness, Prabhupada says, it is divided into three modes of self-identification. Sometimes we identify with this body. Sometimes we identify with matter. And sometimes we identify with divine Supreme Lord servant. That is called as Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, and Adhidaiva. So that is some technical explanation Prabhupada writes. So then this gigantic universal form is represented by this three, Adhyatma, Adhibhut, and Adhidaiva. Prabhupada writes this, what is this one? That is the jiva, the consciousness, which is there in everyone's heart. The soul and super soul, which are there in heart of each and every living entity. So the Supreme Lord, he helps the conditioned souls to remember and to forget. If somebody wants to continue in this material world, Lord will give him forgetfulness of himself. So that is how Lord reciprocates. Now Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Matta Smriti Jnana Apohanam Cha. I give remembrance, I give knowledge, I give forgetfulness. So Lord reciprocates according to our desires. So if we want to remember him, Krishna gives the remembrance. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayantite. Whoever renders service unto the Supreme Lord, satata yuktanam, always engaged in service, Krishna gives the intelligence by which they can come to him. So therefore, Krishna says, Matta Smriti Jnana Apohanam Cha. I give knowledge, I give remembrance, I give forgetfulness. So what it means when Krishna says, I give forgetfulness also? So we many times hear in the scriptures that sense gratification leads to misery. We have heard so many times that nothing of this world can give us happiness and satisfaction. It will give us all pain. But when Maya tempts us, many times we forget all the instructions. And that's what happened with Ajamil. Ayam hi shruta sampanna shila vritta gunalaya dhritrata mridudanta satyavak mantra vitshuchi. He had all these qualities. He had studied all the Vedas. Shruta sampanna, gentle, gunalaya, full of good qualities. But still, when he saw that scene of a Shudra embracing a prostitute, he fell down. So when we forget Krishna, is it Krishna's responsibility? Is Krishna responsible for our forgetfulness? Because Krishna says, Matta Smriti Jnana Apohanam. No. Krishna is not responsible. He is responsive. We are responsible. According to our desires, he responds. The more we cultivate the desires and we try to remember Krishna, the more Krishna will reciprocate. According to our desires, Krishna gives us remembrance and forgetfulness. So when a sense object comes in front of us, it is our responsibility how we respond. And depending on our responses, Krishna will respond. If some sense object comes and if a person, living entity, devotee starts contemplating on the sense object, dhyayato vishayan pumsa. So then Krishna says, okay, you want it? Okay, I will make you forget myself. You enjoy the sense gratification, So according to Krishna's desire, according to our desires, Krishna responds to our desires. So if we want to enjoy, then Krishna will give forgetfulness. So that is very, very important to understand. Many times we may tell Krishna, sometimes we want to remember you, we want to serve you, but in the heart core of our hearts, we preserve some of the material desires. So Krishna responds according to those desires also. So we have to take responsibility of our desire. We have to regularly introspect. We have to choose consciously devotional desires. I want to love Krishna, serve Krishna. I want to read Bhagavatam. I want to purify my heart. So these are the desires which we have to cultivate. And based on our consistent desires, Krishna gives us remembrance of himself. So when we are regularly trying to remember Krishna, then Krishna gives us remembrance even in the midst of anti-devotional circumstances. But if we are not remembering Krishna regularly, and we are not putting effort to remember Krishna, we will not remember Krishna even in the midst of devotional circumstances. So therefore, it is very, very important that we try, we endeavor, because bhakti is sudurlabha, very rare. So when we show our seriousness, when we show our genuine desire, then Krishna reciprocates. He will give us forgetfulness of our previous material conditionings, and he will make us remember our devotional desires. So that is how we have to understand. Krishna gives all the remembrance and forgetfulness. So if we hold on to our desires to love Krishna, to remember him, then Krishna will reciprocate. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Naivodvije paraduratya vaitaranya twadvirya gayana mahamritamagna chittaha shoche tato vimukhchetasa indriyarthaya maya sukhaya bharamudvahato vimudhan. So Prahlad Maharaj is telling, I am not disturbed seeing this material world, because for sure I will cross this material world, because I am absorbed in chanting your holy names. Tadavirya gayana mahamrita magna chittaha. So the more we are absorbed in chanting and remembering the names of the Lord, pastimes of the Lord, the more we'll become fearless. And then he says, I am just lamenting about the condition of these material people, materialistic people. Shoche tato vimukhchetaha. They have turned their face away from Krishna. So Prahlad Maharaj is not thinking, oh, I want to enjoy sense gratification, but what to do? No, he is not thinking I'm missing sense gratification. He is lamenting seeing the materialistic people who are doing sense gratification. So he tells that, oh, all the sense gratification of this world is what? It is like a mirage. It seems that there is happiness, but there is no happiness. Kutra shisha shruti sukha mriga trishni rupa. It is all mriga trishna. Mriga trishna means the mirage. So therefore, the more we cultivate devotional desires, the more Krishna will give us the remembrance, because he is there in everyone's heart, responding to the desires of each and every living entity. So when we become serious in Krishna, he will make us remember his glory. He'll make us forget our previous material conditionings. So that is how we have to understand. So all these devatas, they were entrusted with the work to create this universe. And because they prayed to Supreme Lord, so Lord, he manifested himself as gigantic form. So Lord reciprocates to the prayers of the devotees. Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, all these mundane PhDs, they are speculating about this material universe. They are thinking that this universe is made of, made by all this chemical evolution and this Big Bang. They're trying to identify how this universe is created. You know what they are doing? They are like the Dr. Frog. Prabhupada gives the example of Dr. Frog. So one time this Dr. Frog, he came to know the size. There is a big Pacific Ocean. So how big it is? So he started puffing up himself with the air, and he became, filled with air more and more, and ultimately his abdomen burst and he died. You know. So that is what Prabhupada says. All these, PhDs, what will happen to them? They'll just go on speculating and nothing is going to happen and they will die. With every rising and setting of the sun, the life is decreasing. Prabhupada writes a very funny thing. He says, PhD, it can be interpreted as plow department. PH, plow, and D is department. That means a person who is tilling a paddy field. So just like a person who is tilling a paddy field, he cannot understand this cosmic manifestation. Just like frog cannot understand the size of Pacific Ocean, these scientists, they can never understand how this cosmic creation is, cosmos is created. And then Maitreya, after describing this, he tells, now please hear from me as I describe how the Supreme Lord manifested into various devatas, the forms of devatas. So in spiritual world, just by desiring something, it is manifested. Chintamani prakarasatma sukalpa vriksha lakshavriteshu surabhira vipalayantam Lakshmi sahasra shata sambrama sevyamanam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So in Goloka there are Chintamani, there are Kalpa Vriksha. You just desire and it will be fulfilled. But when the same living entity comes to this material world, here nothing is Kalpa Vriksha. So here we have to depend on some external resources to fulfill our desires. So this entire creation is made to fulfill the desires of living entity to enjoy in this world. So this rest of the chapter from 11 to 26 verse describes the process of manifestation of different devatas from the universal form. So the gross organ first manifested in this Virata Rupa, and then sense devatas develop along with their subtle sense organ, and then the subject sense objects are created. So this is another chart from Subodhini which describes how the various things are created in this world, in this universe, because the gross organ first manifested in the universal form. So the mouth manifested. So who is the controlling deity of the mouth? That is Agni, fire. And there is subtle sense organ also. That is voice. So the mouth, it is a gross thing, but the power of speech is another thing that is called as subtle. Similarly, nostril, there is a gross nostril and there is a sense of smell. So the gross nostril is a gross organ which is called as nasika, and the subtle sense organ is called as ghrana. So in this way, all these things are described, how various devatas are created, then subtle sense organs and then sense objects are created. So after describing all this, then he describes how in this material universe, Virat Rupa manifested various parts of the body. Again, it is imagination, because the head, what is the head of the Virat Rupa? There is nothing like head of the Virat Rupa, because the entire Virat Rupa is an imaginary thing. So what is the head of the Virat Rupa? The heavenly planets and the devatas who are in the mode of goodness. Then what is the leg of this Virat Rupa? The lower planetary systems or earthly planetary systems. What's the abdomen of this Virat Rupa? That is the middle planetary systems. Bhuvaraloka, Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha. So Swarga is considered to be the head. Bhulok is considered to be the leg. Bhuvaraloka, which is in between, is considered to be the abdomen. Then from various parts of this universal, from various varnas also appear. Brahmana, they appears from the mouth of this Virata Rupa. Kshatriyas manifest from the arms of Virata Rupa. Then Vaishyas, they appear from the abdomen or thighs of Virata Rupa. And the Shudras, they appear from the legs of this Virata Rupa. And all these different varnas, they have their particular roles. So Brahmanas, they are natural teachers. Kshatriyas, they are the protectors of the society. Vaishyas, they are involved in producing the grains. Krishi, Gorakshya, Vanijyam, Vaishya Karma, Swabhavajam. And the Shudras, they are engaging in the menial, humble menial activity, supporting all the other varnas. So Maitreya continues that, all these varnas, they are created ultimately to serve the Supreme Lord. Varnashram acharvata purushena parahpuman Vishnu aradhyate pantha na anyat tattosha karanam. Vishnu aradhyate. So all these various varnas are created so that ultimately these people can be connected to the Supreme Lord. That is the underlying principle. That is the constitutional position. Prabhupada gives example of the body. Just like various parts of the body, legs, hands, they are supposed to serve the body as a whole. So similarly, all these various varnas, they are supposed to serve the body of the Supreme Lord. That is our constitutional position. Jivera Sarupa Hoye Krishnera Nitya Das. So that is the understanding. But in the conditioned life, a person thinks, no, I want to enjoy on my own. That is a misconception, Prabhupada writes. And the last point of this misconception is, one wants to become the Supreme. I want to become God. Prabhupada would write many times, that is the last snare of Maya. That is the last snare. When after getting frustrated from all the things of this world, this person thinks, I want to become God. I want to control this nature. But the actual position of the living entity is he's supposed to serve the Supreme Lord. And that is the only purifying process which is available. Sve sve karmanya bhirataha samsiddhim labate naraha swakarma nirata siddhim yatha vindati tashrano. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, whatever sve sve karmani abhirataha, whatever activity a person is doing, if he connects it to Krishna, then he will attain perfection. Samsiddhim labhate naraha. So after describing all this, now Maitreya Muni, he feels unworthy to describe the qualities of the Lord. He says, who can estimate or measure the qualities of the Supreme Lord? The Lord has unlimited qualities. So who can describe? Nantam vidamyahamami munayo agrachaste maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye gayan gunanda shishatanana adideva sheshodhunapi samavastyana asya param. It is described that there is no end to the glories of the Lord. Ananta Shesha, he is reciting the glories of the Lord since the beginning of the creation with his thousands of mouths, Gayan Gunan Dasha. But still it has not come to an end. So therefore, Maitreya is telling, who can count the glories of the Lord? They are unlimited. So how can I describe? Again, Prabhupada writes. But still these froggish philosophers and speculators, they tell that they can, control nature. They can understand this nature. They cannot even understand this one universe, what to speak of the Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada writes, even Arjuna could not see the Virat Rupa completely. When Krishna manifested Virat Rupa, Arjuna said, please, I am satisfied. Please remove this form. Please come to that Saumya Rupa again. But still, these froggish philosophers, they want to understand the Supreme by their own understanding, by their own intelligence. They will never be able to understand. So Maitreya feels humbled, and then he speaks this verse. We can recite this verse. Tathapi kirtayamyanga yatha mati yatha shrutam kirtim hare swam satkartum giram anyabhidha satim. So he says, although I am unqualified, tathapi, still I will kirtayami, still I will glorify, yathamati yathashrutam, whatever I have heard and whatever I have assimilated. Because if I don't describe the kirti of the Supreme Lord, then my tongue, my power of speech will become unchaste. Because my body, my existence belongs to the Supreme, and if I don't use it in service of Lord, then it is like an unchaste wife, not serving husband, serving somebody else. Giram anya bidha asati. So we are so indebted to the Lord. So at least we should start glorifying the Lord. So Maitreya says, although the glories of the Lord is unlimited, but still I will try as far as I can. Bile batoru krama vikramanye na shrinvati karna pute narasya jihva asati dardurikeva suta nachopagayat yurugaya gatha. So the sages of Naimisharanya, they are telling to Suta Goswami, please describe the glories of the Lord. We want to hear more. Otherwise, what is the use of these ears? They are like the holes where snakes live. What is the use of this tongue? It is like the tongue of a frog which croaks and invites death. It is unchaste tongue if it is not glorifying the Supreme Lord. And then Maitreya Muni says, actually, the highest perfectional gain for a living entity, for entire humanity, is simply to hear the glories of the Supreme Lord. Ekantalabham vachaso nupumsam sushloka mauler gunavadamahu sutescha vidvadbhirupakritayam katha sudhayam upasam prayogam. So he says, Ekanta Labha, the highest perfectional gain of humanity is what? Sushloka Mauli Gunavadam. To engage in the discussions of the activities and the glories of the most pious actor. People in the world, they want to glorify so many actors of this world. And what are they getting in return? Nothing. They're just wasting their time. But the highest perfectional gain is when you glorify the most pious actor, that is Supreme Lord. Shrutescha vidvad bhirupakritayam, because these activities, they are so nicely presented by the sages. Vidvadbhir, the great learned sages, they have presented these pastimes of the Lord in such a wonderful way. They are actual katha sudha, they are actual nectar. Katha sudhayam upasam prayogam, that is actual nectar for the ears. So therefore, this word upasam prayogam, that is very interesting word. Yoga means to connect. Prayoga means to perfectly connect. Samprayoga means to most perfectly connect. So that's how we connect to the Lord most perfectly, when we hear about the Lord. So anything else is just a waste. That is the highest perfection of life if somebody remembers Krishna. Ekanta labham, that is the only benefit. That is the only treasure. People in the world, they work in companies. Most of the people, they work to get salary. We are also there in the enterprise of the Panchatattva. We are also working. Why? What is the salary we are getting? Sei Panchatattva mili prithvi asiya purve prema bhandarera mudra ughadiya. So Lord, they have come as Panchatattva and they are distributing this salary of love. Prema ratana bina daridra jivan das more das kari vetan more deha prema dhan. Dhan, that is the vetan. That is the salary. What is the salary? Prema dhan. So Mahaprabhu, he has come to give this prema dhan. That is the ekanta labha. So we have joined in ISKCON. Every country, they pay their people in certain currency. In India, rupees. In America, dollars. In Japan, yen. Ruble. So many. Dinar. We should know the currency in which we are paid. The devotees. What is the currency in which we are paid for this prema dhan? The ekanta labha, the only currency, only salary which we are getting is hearing. Hearing and chanting is the currency of love. That is the only perfectional gain. That is the only ekanta labha. So when we are connecting to ISKCON, we should understand that all our activities should be focused on around this principle, ekanta labha of hearing and chanting. We have to be very clear why we have come to ISKCON. Not to make more connections with big people, not to eat nice prasad, not to go to various places to visit. No, people are going to so many places. People are eating anyways nice food. That is not the purpose of joining ISKCON. We should always be aware why we have come. The ekanta labha is what? To hear the glories of the Supreme Lord. Because there are two things in this world, lust or love. If we don't develop attraction and love for Krishna, then we tend to lust after things and people of the world. So therefore, this is very, very important thing which Maitreya is telling. That's the greatest treasure in ISKCON is sound vibration. The sound of holy names and Bhagavatam. So that is the only ekanta labha which we are getting by coming here in this society. So after telling this, Maitreya says, how much can I tell? Even Brahma with his 4 heads, he could not understand the Supreme Lord. So how can I understand the Supreme Lord? One time a devotee was telling, he told Prabhupada, if you are telling we cannot understand Krishna, so why have you written so many books? Prabhupada said, to make you understand that you can't understand. That's the purpose. Then Maitreya says, what to speak of me? Even great devatas and powerful people of the world cannot understand. Ato bhagavato maya mayinam api mohini yat swayam chatma vartmatma naveda kim mutapare. Ato bhagavato maya, this potency of the Lord, it is so very amazing. It can bewilder even the great jugglers, great mayavis. They also get bewildered. And what to speak of others? Even Krishna himself gets bewildered. Yat swayam, he himself gets bewildered. Then what to speak of anyone else? One time Krishna was looking at the jeweled pillar in his palace in Dwarka and he was got amazed and surprised. Who is this personality? And he was attracted. Rupa dekhi apanar Krishnera hoila chamatkar aswadite mane uthe kam swasobhagya yaranam saundaryadi guna gram ei rupa nitya taradham. Rupa, seeing his own Rupa, he got attracted. So Prabhupada writes again that, this world is a puzzle for materialists. Nobody can understand. They are simply wasting time. But devotees, they are intelligent. Krishna jai bhaje sai bada chatur. They attain perfection of the life just by appreciating Krishna's creation. They are not into finding how this creation is made, how great is this creation. Creation is great, and glorifying Krishna because he has made this creation. That's how devotees, they attain perfection of life. Even Lord cannot understand. There is actually a dynamic equilibrium between the omniscience and omnipotence of the Lord. Omnipotence means all powerful, and omniscience means all knowing. So Lord's power keeps increasing, and the omniscience Shakti keeps, chasing to know, okay, how much Lord has become great. So the time the omniscience comes to know Lord is this much great, he has become more great, and that's how the equilibrium, that is dynamic equilibrium. Just like if a billionaire is asked, how much money do you have? So he may tell a certain amount, but his interest is getting, generated, and his wealth is increasing constantly. So at every moment he may know, but he doesn't know. So that is what is happening with Krishna. So therefore he says, even great, big people, even Brahmaji cannot understand. How can I understand about the Supreme Lord? And therefore he says in the last verse that with the words, mind, and ego, one can never understand the Supreme Lord. So simply what we have to do, we have to just offer our respects as a matter of sanity. Prabhupada adds these last words, matter of sanity. It is not there in the verse. He added these words, only mad will not offer respects. So therefore, this is the glory of the Supreme Lord. Again, Prabhupada tells, even Brahma, Rudra, they cannot understand. These froggish philosophers, how they will understand? So again and again, Prabhupada is, smashing these philosophers and scientists. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutastunvanti Divyaistavai Vedai Sangapadai Kramopanishadi Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Navidu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So this is a Gita Dhyana verse which describes even Brahma, Rudra, Marutas, Indra, Varuna, they can never understand. They are also offering obeisances, glorifying the Supreme Lord. Who can else? Who else can understand the Supreme Lord? Who can understand? Only devotee can understand. Bhaktyamam vijanati. Of course, to a certain extent. But these people who are not devotees, they can never understand the Supreme Lord. Because Krishna covers their intelligence. Naham Prakash Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavrita. I cover myself with my Yogamaya, and I cover themselves with Mahamaya. They can never see me. They can never understand me. Only devotee can understand me. So that is how this chapter ends. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.